Welcome to the Daily Insider here on Vegas Insider. I am Kevin Rogers. Today is Wednesday, November 17th, 2021, and a lot to go over as we go through today's program. Brian Edwards will join us coming up in just moments to talk college football. The new top four for the college football playoff released last night. Not a lot of change, but also look at some games ahead for the weekend. And also Pats Falcons kicks off week 11 in the NFL coming up tomorrow in Atlanta. But before we get to all of that, BetMGM, they are the king of sportsbooks. That's right. Bet $10 to win $200 if your team scores a touchdown for new players only. If you are a new player, you get this promotion. Bet $10 to win $200 if your team scores a touchdown. Bet on any NFL money line. And if your team scores a touchdown, you'll receive an additional $200 in free bets. Again, new players only, must be 21 years or older, eligible in the following states: Arizona, New Jersey, Indiana, Colorado, Tennessee, West Virginia, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. only. Full terms and conditions apply. That is BetMGM. And you know who they are? They are the king of sportsbooks. As now we bring on our friend Brian Edwards. And Brian, let us break down the college stuff. How are you?
I'm doing well. K-Raj, what's happening?
Well, let's get to this first. The top four in the college football playoff. Not a lot of change, but Georgia still number one, Bama 2, Oregon 3, Ohio State 4. Oregon's beaten Ohio State. Georgia and Alabama on a collision course in the SEC championship. Any thoughts on this on these latest rankings?
It's all going to work itself out. I think, first off, I think Oregon's going to lose, if not this Saturday. They still have a much tougher game than normal against Oregon State, and then whoever they would get in the Pac-12 championship game. So I think Oregon's going to fall. And, you know, Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, they're all going to be playing each other. So I think it's going to work itself out. I mean, actually, you know, Oklahoma losing last week got them out of it. But there's just been way too much in my mind, just media, just babble about it. Just let it play out. Who cares? We're like a month away from it. So anyway.
Well, also, Cincinnati's at 5. You think they have any shot to get in if things kind of break, if Oregon State beats Oregon? If you have Ohio State, Michigan State all at 9-1, so one of those teams will get in somehow. But do you think there's any way Cincinnati gets in?
Absolutely. Like I said, I think Oregon is going to lose, and then Georgia could beat Alabama in the SEC championship game. Now, I was thinking Alabama could lose at Auburn. With Bo Nix out, that's less likely. But I could see Alabama and Oregon losing, Ohio State beating Michigan, so that gets Michigan off their tail. Michigan State losing to Ohio State this weekend. They've got the head-to-head with Notre Dame. So if those things happen, which aren't tough ask at all. I mean, Oregon is an underdog. The Alabama Georgia line is out. Georgia is the favorite. I mean, those are not tough ask, and that would leave their toughest competition as Oklahoma State. I mean, I don't think 2-loss Alabama would get in ahead of Cincy. Do you?
I've always looked at it like this, Brian. You take care of your business. You're asked to take care of your business, okay? You win every game. Cincinnati's not in a terrible conference. Alabama loses twice. How is there an argument that they're in ahead of undefeated Cincinnati? That's not Texas, San Antonio. It's not them if they were undefeated in Conference USA. But Cincinnati winning at Notre Dame, that's got to be enough if Alabama's got 2 losses.
Especially with the way Notre Dame keeps winning. I mean, it sucks for Cincy that Indiana has just turned in a garbage season. But look, that SMU, they've got them this week. East Carolina is playing very good football. Cincinnati might not win at East Carolina, by the way. And then Houston has won 9 in a row, and they've got them. So Cincy's remaining schedule, SMU at home at East Carolina, in Houston, who could come into that game on an 11-game winning streak. Absolutely, Cincinnati has a chance to get in. I just don't know that they're going to win all their games.
And the problem with Cincinnati, too, has been they've had a lot of struggles recently. They're getting by in these games, and it's not making their case look better because the American isn't great. You have a couple decent teams, but you also have Temple and USF and Navy, and it's a lot of not great teams. Tulsa's taking a step back this year. Memphis taking a step back this year. So it doesn't really help Cincinnati's cause that those things have happened.
It doesn't, but the fact that they would finish with SMU, East Carolina, I don't think anybody notices what East Carolina's been doing. I mean, East Carolina right now has won, let's see. I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 3 and 2, 4 and 2, 5 and 2. They've won 6 of their last 8. They've covered in 7 of those. One of the losses was overtime at Houston, which is won 9 in a row. And the other loss was by 4 at UCF in a game that went to the wire. They're going to win at Navy. Well, I would think they'll win at Navy. So, yeah, I mean, SMU, Houston, and East Carolina will bolster Cincy's strength of schedule here in the next 3 weeks.
That was East Carolina kicking themselves for losing to South Carolina in week 2, right?
Right. Yes, they had that game. I mean, they were up 14-0, about going in on the fringe of field goal range and threw like a 60-yard pick six with like a minute and a half left in the first half.
Let's look at Saturday's games now, Brian, and let's begin in the Big Ten. Minnesota and Indiana, row your boat with PJ Fleck, and it's just been such an up and down season for Minnesota. It feels like it's always been that way, but you mentioned too with Indiana and just how bad they've been. Penix was hurt, which didn't help, and they just couldn't really capitalize off a good year last year. They're 2-8, but Minnesota, this is definitely a spot where they have to take control here and get their 7th win.
Yeah, so I got them early in the week last week at +6, and the line eventually moved to 4, but that 27-22 loss at Iowa was a cover for me. I'm now 3-0 backing the Gophers this year. Officially, they're 3-1 both straight up and against the spread on the road, but for me, they're 3-1 straight up and 4-0 against the spread on the road because I got it before the line moved south of 5 last week. And, you know, we're comfortable backing Minnesota -7 at Indiana, but we're equally as comfortable, if not more so, fading Indiana, which is 1-4 both straight up and against the spread in 5 home games. And the lone outright win and spread cover was against Idaho, an FCS opponent, when they won 56-14 as a 31-point favorite in week 2. They've lost by 14 at home to Minnesota, by 47 at home to Ohio State, by 35 at home to Rutgers. So Minnesota -7.
Oh, no. And you know what? You said 14 to Minnesota. You meant Cincinnati.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
And you know what? They were winning that game.
Yes. And they had kind of a shaky call go against them late in the first half on a targeting. Yeah, they played a very good first half, but then Cincy got then they get 10 points in the last 2 minutes of the first half and then turned it on in the second half.
Yeah, and they had a kickoff return for a touchdown too, which after Indiana took back the lead. I remember that because I was on Indiana that game thinking, oh, maybe here they could pull the upset, and they were right there. Early. That was the best performance they've had all year, Indiana, because they've been pretty dreadful. I know they've had injuries, but we'll see if Minnesota can bounce back after they've lost 2 in a row. Now, Brian, Florida and Missouri, they hook up at Faurot Field in Columbia, and Missouri has actually played a little better of late. They beat South Carolina, a thing that Florida couldn't do. So, okay, before we get to this game, does Dan Mullen get fired after this season?
Yes.
Okay, it seems like he will because everything has gone so south. I didn't watch a lot of the Samford game. How did Samford move the ball up the field so much on them? I know Florida dropped 70 on them, but how did Samford move the ball up the field on them?
No, I mean, fair and square. Fair and square. Big games. They got a fat guy touchdown of who was pointing at the stands from the 25-yard line. It did a fat boy end zone dance that just had me laughing. I mean, it was just, I was kind of enjoying it because I want Mullen gone. Yeah, it was the most points ever given up by Florida in a half ever against a number 1 team, against an eventual national champion, etc. It was ridiculous. And if you think Florida had a hard time stopping South Carolina's run game, which is 11th in the SEC, and stopping LSU's run game, which is 13th out of 14 in the SEC. Well, here comes Tyler Beatty, the SEC's leading rusher, with 1,239 rushing yards, 12 rushing touchdowns, 6.2 yards per carry average, and 50 catches for 337 yards and 4 touchdowns. Beatty is going to run all over the Gators, who are 1-4 both straight up and against the spread in their last 5 games. The lone victory in spread cover was 42-0 at home to Vandy. Abysmal 2-8 straight up last 10 against FBS foes. I like Missouri to win outright. You can get them on the money line in the plus 250 to plus 280 range. The Gators defense in the last 4 games has given up 49, 34, 40, and 52 points.
I'm looking at Missouri, and I think back to the Kentucky game back in early September. They had a shot in that game. That was tied. They ended up losing that game by 7. There was, a fumble late Kentucky had. They recovered their own fumble, and that was the go-ahead score. The BC game, they were leading late, and then Boston College tied, and Missouri had that 50-something yard field goal to force overtime. Then BC won in overtime. But, man, Missouri's had some real duds this year, Brian. They give up 62 to Tennessee at home. They get blown out by A&M after A&M beat Alabama, and they lose by 37 to Georgia, which they actually covered. But, I mean, everyone's lost to Georgia this year. But you're beating South Carolina, Vandy, North Texas, Southeast Missouri State, Central Michigan. I mean, they've beaten a bunch of dogs this year.
This is all true, but they are 5-5. They are motivated to get bowl eligible at home because that Arkansas next week, it's going to be a tough task for them. And they've got a team that is absolutely sleepwalking and showing no effort to salvage or provide their head coach with any sense of job security whatsoever. Missouri wins outright.
All right, so Florida plays Florida State next week, and the Seminoles coming off the big win over Miami, a game that FSU was in control of. Miami came back, and then FSU hit that big 4th and long. They get inside. They get down to the 1. I personally, Brian, just as a Florida State graduate, I was afraid they were going to get stuffed like 3 times inside the 1. I was really afraid of that. I hate that quarterback sneak. It's just a bunch of guys go. It just do something else. But they end up scoring the touchdown. They beat Miami. They finally beat Manny Diaz, and who knows if he's out the door soon. But what do you think about this game? Jerkovich came back for BC. They beat Georgia Tech last week, and now the Eagles are favored.
I love Boston College, and this is how much I love Boston College. When they had lost 4 in a row, Jerkovich supposedly out for the season. I have a lot of money on Boston. I have an uncomfortable amount of money on Boston College season win total over 7. That if they lose this game, I could still get a push if they win. Let's see who they got next week. Wake Forest at home, but Wake Forest might not have anything to play for and be a look ahead to their first ACC championship game. I believe that'll be their first ACC championship game. But this is the ultimate sandwich spot for FSU. Post Miami, a rally, your home finale. It looked like it was packed house, and as big a win as FSU's had at home in a minute. And now you got the Gators on deck in a game, you suddenly have some optimism about, or they probably had optimism for multiple weeks on that game. But look, Boston College is 3-1, both straight up and against the spread in 4 home games. With Jerkovich, they're 4-0 straight up, 3-1 against the spread, the non-cover being the game he left on the second possession of the game. Man, he was terrific at Georgia Tech last weekend. 13 of 20 for 310 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He ran for 71 yards and 3 touchdowns on 8 attempts. Zay Flowers is one of the best receivers in the country. Has had a down year because Jerkovich has been out and they haven't had any passing game. But he had 2 catches, 87 yards, 2 touchdowns last week. And I think BC's got its mojo, its swagger back. FSU's only 1-2 straight up and against the spread on the road. It helps FSU that it's a day game, but it is still a cold weather game for them mid-November up in Chestnut Hill. And I love me some Boston College here, and I'm betting on I'm making myself even more uncomfortable on the season win total bet by betting on BC this week, when the smart thing to do would probably be take FSU. But I'm not doing that. I like to gamble.
I know you don't do that. That's not you. You don't do those things. So BC gets Wake next week, and Wake plays Clemson this week. That should be pretty interesting to see if Clemson. I did see this, Brian. They're 10-1 to win the ACC, which means they got to beat Wake and then hope that Wake loses to Boston College since Clemson's done after this week, and they play South Carolina next week. They're done in conference. So, would you even take a flyer on that on Clemson 10-1 to win the ACC?
It sounds like a good idea. I just think Clemson's offense is just such garbage. And who do they have next week? They've got
South Carolina.
Oh, at South Carolina.
Yeah, so they're done after this in the ACC.
Yeah. Gotcha. I'm sorry. Yeah, you probably already said that. My fault. No, I don't think so. I think Wake Forest is going to beat them. Their offense just sucks.
I mean, Wake can drop 50 in a game like it's nothing.
I know, and I just can't see, even as bad as Wake Forest's defense is, and it is deplorable, I still think Clemson's offense can keep up with them. And Clemson's got the best defense Wake has faced, but Wake's offense is a machine.
Now let's look at the Friday game in the American, Memphis and Houston, and I'll give Holgerson a lot of credit here, man. 9-1. Great job by him. And you know what? They lost that game to Texas Tech out of the chute. They were winning that game, right? Didn't Texas Tech make a nice comeback? And you see the two teams now. Texas Tech fired their head coach. They're a disaster. And Houston's 9-1.
Yeah, I mean, Holgo was a big waste of money coming into this year. They paid him a ton to leave West Virginia, and he had gone 4-8 straight up and 3-5 straight up. But, man, they have turned it on, and 6 of the 9 wins in a row have been by double-digit margins. They're undefeated at home. Only 2-2 against the spread, but those were double-digit chalk rolls. And we're laying single digits here. Memphis is 1-3 straight up, 0-4 against the spread on the road. Only outright win at Arkansas State, which is Butch Jones's team, which is 2-8. And until last weekend, they beat ULM. Before that, their only other win was against FCS Central Arkansas. So Memphis has been terrible on the road, and they also had some extra snaps last week in an overtime game. I know that's not worth a whole lot, just pointing it out. And Memphis is, regardless of venue, 2-5, but straight up and against the spread since they started 3-0. I like Houston -9.
So is it the Norvell effect now that he's gone, that their offense is just shot?
Perhaps. No, I don't know.
I know. I mean, it does seem like they're not scoring at will like they used to.
They aren't. Yeah, no. So, yeah, I guess that's fair.
I mean, look at Memphis. Brian, look at their last – what is this? This is 29 against East Carolina, 28 against SMU. That's a good win. 7 against UCF, but their quarterback was out. 35 against Navy, 29 against Tulsa, 31 against Temple. Temple's terrible. They're up 17-0 in that game to Temple. They lost the Texas San Antonio game. They were up 21-0 in that game and lost at the end. But I feel like that offense would score 40 and 50 like it was nothing, and they're not even approaching that at all.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Norvell, starting in 2016, 38.8 points per game. The next year, 45.5. The next year, 42.9. His last year, 40.4. So you're exactly right. They're scoring a lot fewer points.
Let's look at the finally in the Big Ten, Wisconsin and Nebraska. And Frosty, I saw, has got another year as the head coach there. What do you think about that?
I don't know. This is not the 90s, man. Not a whole lot of people want to go be the head coach at Nebraska because it's still a pressure cooker. And yet, I mean, they ran Pelini out of there. What didn't he go 9-4 like 4 or 5 years in a row? And something like that. But anyhow, I think I forget what the contract situation was. I think they were going to have to pay a good bit of a buyout. I mean, they've been like, I think we talked about this after the Oklahoma game where I was like, well, maybe they're coming around on him. And then I'm like, you know what? No, they're still making stupid, mistakes and losing all these close games. I think all of their losses this year, most of them are by one possession. I think the one to Ohio State was by 9. I think that's their. I'm not looking at their.
Yeah, 9, 5, 7, 3, 3, 7, 8.
Right.
Are their losses?
So there. I mean, is that coaching? I don't know. I mean, I'm not against them giving him one more year. He's recruited pretty well. I think he's had a top 25 class every single season. Now, I don't think he's had one higher than like 16th or 17th, but whatever. That's not bad for Nebraska, at least not in the new modern era, if you will.
Now, Wisconsin, though, they've caught fire, and they've won 6 straight since the Michigan loss. And look, they had 2 bad losses in Notre Dame and Michigan where they got blown out, and Wisconsin has come back. I know it's ugly. They lost the Penn State game early. They were 1-3, and now they are back on fire. And look, some of those games, Illinois, Northwestern, Rutgers, aren't exactly great opponents, but they beat Iowa by 20. They won at Purdue, and Purdue, yeah, they were coming off the that was off of the Iowa win. So they have the potential. You know, the Wisconsin, but you think they cover again here?
Yeah, I mean, here's the deal with Wisconsin. They undoubtedly, there's nobody can question this. They have the second best defense in the nation. Georgia's the only one that's better, and maybe even that is, I don't know. Maybe it's debatable, maybe not. But look, despite giving up 41 to Notre Dame, which, by the way, was 1 special teams touchdown and 2 pick sixes, so they really only gave up 20 points that game. But despite 41 to Notre Dame and 38 to Michigan, they're still number 2 in the nation in scoring defense, giving up an average of only 14.6 points per game. During this 6-game winning streak, they've given up only 7.3 points per game. In the 6-game winning streak, 5-1 against the spread. In the 5 spread covers, they beat the closing lines by 80.5 combined points. Nebraska's winless in 4 road games, 1-2-1 against the spread. Regardless of venue, the Cornhuskers have lost 4 in a row and 6 of 7. And look, Graham Mertz was so deplorable, atrocious, abysmal, all that in September. They haven't asked him to do nearly as much lately. Thank goodness. Nice job, Paul Chryst. But, I'll nonetheless point out that he is playing better in the last month. He's got a 6-2 TDINT ratio in their last 5 games. And in the last 2, he's had 2 of his top 3, passing yardage outputs for the year, which still isn't much, 240 and 216. But, I mean, he's got games where he's only had like 40 yards passing and 70 and 80. So, Mertz is playing better. They're not asking him to do a lot. The defense is just downright nasty.
Now, before I let you go, Brian, tomorrow night, big showdown at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the house of horrors for the Atlanta Falcons. So they can't win there. They get the Patriots. And Atlanta off a terrible loss to Dallas last week. New England's played well. 4-0 on the road, and they're breathing down Buffalo's neck in the AFC East. Do you think the Falcons bounce back here? Let me, before I get to that, why are they so bad at home? That's what I want to know. Why are they in this brand new, beautiful facility they cannot win to save themselves?
I have no idea. The defense can't hold a lead like the Washington game. The first game was on Arthur Smith, who wasn't even like playing Kyle Pitts. And first off, Atlanta has a horrible head coach. But look, if Cordarrelle Patterson does not play tomorrow night, and he's very, very questionable, going to be a game-time decision. In fact, Smith told the media like 45 minutes ago that he has no idea they'll take it all the way up to game time. He's got an ankle injury, and Hayden Hurst is questionable. So if Patterson can't play and Hurst can't play, Belichick, who called Kyle Pitts an absolute superstar in a media scrum yesterday, and you're right, Bill. You're right, bud. He's going to take away Kyle Pitts. He's going to have double, triple coverages. Bill Belichick is going to take Kyle Pitts away from this offense, and Matt Ryan's going to have nothing to work with. You're right, Atlanta 0-3, but straight up and against the spread at home. New England 4-0 straight up, 3-1 against the spread on the road. 4 games in a row they've won straight up and against the spread. They've won 5 of 6. The only loss, the overtime loss to Dallas when Dallas had that critical pick 6 in the fourth quarter. Look, I never liked the road team on these short week NFL games. I absolutely love New England if Patterson doesn't play, and I like them anyway, whether Patterson and Hurst play. But if those 2 guys don't play, I love New England.
And you know what, too? I mean, New England, you can't dispute what they've done. And somehow Mac Jones, I feel like he's gotten it together. What do you think about Mac's play so far?
Well, I said going into the draft that, and I will not – I'm trying not to pat myself on the back too much here because I didn't even really consider Trevor Lawrence because I knew he was going to play for that D-bag head coach, and I knew he was walking into a horrible organization that went 1-15 last year. So I really didn't even I knew it was a given Trevor would have a bad rookie year. But I said out of all the quarterbacks, I said that Mac Jones, I don't know if he is like going to be the best in the long run, but there is no doubt about it. He will be the best in his rookie season. He will be the best quarterback, and he's doing what I thought he would do, and he's playing very well, but I'm not surprised whatsoever.
Yeah, he's playing well, and we'll see what the Patriots do as far as keeping this streak alive and see if the Falcons can somehow bust out of their little slump at home. Brian Edwards, you could find him on Twitter right there, Vegas B. Edwards, and also check out our SEC Best Bet video that we'll tape in a little bit, and we'll have it out for all the games this week. He's already given you pretty much a preview of Florida, Missouri, but also look at some other games inside the SEC as well. Brian, thanks so much for the time. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, K-Raj.
All right, there is Brian Edwards, and always great work out of Brian. And we'll talk some NBA coming up in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to tell you all about WynnBET. And what's really cool about WynnBET, they're the official partner of the New York Jets. And the Jets are at home against the Dolphins this week at MetLife Stadium. You could check out the WynnBET Green Room at MetLife Stadium up in New Jersey. Eligible bettors of legal age can enjoy the atmosphere of a fully fledged in-person sports book. That's right. The WynnBET app, if you have it, that also helps you. You could go to MetLife Stadium there in East Rutherford, New Jersey. And if you're legal age, you can go into that WynnBET Green Room and check out the sports book there. That should be a lot of fun, an in-person sports book, which is really cool inside the stadium at MetLife there in East Rutherford. Now, WynnBET, you can download the mobile sportsbook app on iOS or Android devices. And when you download the WynnBET mobile sportsbook, you're a new patron, you can get a $1,000 risk-free first bet with a $20 minimum first deposit and eligible sports bet. When you use the promo code VI bonus, that means if you lose your first wager, you get it back up to $1,000 as a free bet credit that you can use for another bet. The WynnBET promo code will expire soon, so make sure to grab it while you can. That is WynnBET. Of course, you have to be 21 years or older to bet. All right, so let's now take a look at the NBA tonight and what we have on tap inside of the NBA, and a very busy night inside the league. Let's roll right through it. Wizards and the Hornets, they meet in Charlotte, and the Wizards have been absolutely on fire. Bradley Beal expected back tonight for Washington. They're 10-3 on the season, 9-4 against the spread. Charlotte comes in at 8-7. And the Hornets playing well of late after they struggled on their road trip. They had lost 5 straight. They won the final game at Memphis and then beat the Knicks and the Warriors at home. Won 3 straight, all as a dog. Now they're favored. Washington has won 5 straight, and they're 4-1 against the spread in that span. And also Washington, 6 straight unders. We'll see what happens with Beal back in the lineup tonight. But should be a pretty good game in the Southeast Division. The Pacers and the Pistons. Once upon a time, it was a slugfest with these teams, but times have changed. And Indiana at 6-9, Detroit at 3-10. And the Pacers had 1-2 straight before a complete dud in the fourth quarter against the Knicks a few nights ago. Scored 10 points, lost 92-84. And Indiana, though, still a pretty good under team, 8-2 to the under their last 10 games overall. Detroit off a 22-point home loss to Sacramento back on Monday, and they were down like 41-12 after the first quarter. So the Pistons, they'll try to bounce back. What's interesting is off their last 2 losses, they've won. So that's that. They only have 1 home win, though, so far in the season, but Indiana's just 2-7 away from home. The Celtics and the Hawks in Atlanta, and the Hawks 6-9 on the season, 5-1 at home, 1-8 on the road. So at home, they normally play better. Boston, meanwhile, they are so Jekyll and Hyde this season. Blew a 19-point lead to Cleveland on Saturday, but then held off Cleveland 98-92 last night. Celtics have covered 7 straight out of nowhere, and they did cover the Cleveland game Saturday. They were laying 3. They closed as 2.5-point dogs, lost by 2. So they still got that cover, but Boston has been amazing against the number. And the Celtics, they go to Atlanta, where the Hawks now 20-point win over Milwaukee, 18-point win over Orlando. And for the exception of the one bad performance against Utah at home, they've been pretty dominant so far at State Farm Arena. And we'll see if the Celtics can continue their hot streak ATS. The Nets lost last night to the Warriors. They're talking on all the talk shows today that, the Nets have to blow the whole thing up. I mean, it's early, and Kyrie's still not playing. But the Nets lose to the Warriors last night, 117-99. That snaps a 3-game winning streak. And Brooklyn did clean up against a lot of bad teams. And now they get Cleveland, who is not a bad team anymore, but injuries are getting to them. Evan Mobley, their top pick out of USC, he's out for about a month with an elbow injury. And they're just losing so many guys. Jared Allen probably isn't going to play tonight. Colin Sexton is out. Lauri Markkanen is out. So they're just losing a lot of their main players. And Cleveland, now they're 0-2 against the spread the last two after they went on a 7-game ATS hot streak. Cleveland still has had a pretty good season at 9-6. Brooklyn at 10-5. The Nets really have to take advantage of this game tonight with Cleveland being all banged up. The Heat back at home, they host the Pelicans, and Miami at 9-5, New Orleans at 2-13, and the Pelicans off a really bad loss to Washington, 105-100. They blew a 19-point lead up 17 at the half, and getting 4.5, so that one burned a little bit more. The Heat, they struggled on their road trip, lost the first 3. They had the Jokic situation in Denver, lost to the Lakers in overtime, lost to the Clippers by 3. But then a nice win at Utah, good win at Oklahoma City without Butler, without Bam Adebayo. And it looks like both those guys are questionable tonight. So we'll see how that affects them coming back from their long road trip. The Lakers and the Bucks, it could be a NBA Finals preview. But right now, it doesn't look like it. Bucks at 6-8. Lakers at 8-7. LeBron's still out. LeBron may return Friday for Boston on the road. Lakers begin a nice little road trip here. Boston, Detroit, New York after this. Milwaukee, they've lost their last 2. They've lost 4 of 6. They supposed to get Chris Middleton back tonight. They're laying 9.5. And Milwaukee off an overtime loss at Boston, blown out by Atlanta. That was a revenge spot for the Hawks in the Eastern Conference Finals. But still, Milwaukee gets Oklahoma City, Orlando coming up. They have a lot of games they could clean up and get back above 500. You're getting the Lakers here at a major, major dog price. Now you just kind of wonder, again, let's see. I mean, Anthony Davis is probable. We know LeBron's still out. We'll see what kind of effect Chris Middleton has returning to the lineup. But both these teams right now need to get on track fast. Magic and the Knicks at the Garden. New York blew out Orlando in their first meeting in Orlando. Magic beat the Knicks at the Garden. After that is 12-point dogs. Orlando at 3-11, 4-10 against the spread. Knicks at 8-6. Knicks have been all over the place this year, it feels like. Some good wins early. They beat Boston. They beat Chicago. They beat Philadelphia. They beat Milwaukee, beating the Sixers twice, in fact. But also losing by 8 at Charlotte. They lost by 13 at Indiana. They were blown out by Cleveland at home in the Rubio game. Lost to Toronto at home. So the Knicks have been so all over the place. The Magic, since beating Utah, they're 0-3 straight up and against the spread. Two teams that are allergic to the playoffs, the Kings and the Timberwolves. They meet in Minnesota tonight at Target Center, and Sacramento off a really good win at Detroit. I know it's like, well, you beat Detroit, but they really needed to get that because the Kings had dropped 4 straight, so they come up with a resounding win by 22 over the Pistons on Monday. Final game of the road trip for the Kings tonight. The Timberwolves, meanwhile, there was some potential to start the season, but they have lost 8 of 9. The only win came at the Lakers. They had that big third quarter a few nights ago, but lost by 3 to Phoenix 2 nights ago, covered as 4-point dogs. They're only, 2-7 ATS the last 9 games. So even against the spread, they've been terrible. I'll give the Timberwolves this if it means anything. Look at who they played the last 10 games. Suns, Clippers, Lakers, Warriors, Grizzlies, Clippers, Orlando. That's the one exception. Denver, Milwaukee. That is a gauntlet for Minnesota. And they're a young team. They have a couple young stars, and Anthony Edwards and Towns, but they're, 4-9. You thought there was going to be a little bit more optimism going into the season with them. Rockets and Thunder, two more teams won't be going to the playoffs, but a few years ago, they met in the playoffs, and it was fun. Now, Harden, Westbrook, all those guys are gone. So, Oklahoma City is surprisingly 5-8. And the Thunder, they are coming off back-to-back home losses to the Nets and the Heat. But before that, they had covered 5 straight and 7 of 8, which is very impressive for Oklahoma City. They had some nice comebacks. They beat the Lakers twice in comeback fashion. They came back to beat the Spurs. They knocked off New Orleans on the road. They hung on to beat Sacramento. A lot of unders for Oklahoma City this year. But off 2 bad losses, now they're laying points to Houston. Houston has been abysmal. Houston was, 1-1? They've lost 12 straight. They were routed by Memphis the other night by 34. They lost the night before by 26 to Phoenix. So this Rockets team is just desperate to have anything go their way. They're 0-8 on the road, too. Mavericks and the Suns, Phoenix, they were 1-3 at one time. Remember that? They're now 10-3. That's 9 straight wins for Phoenix. And Dallas is 9-4. You know what? Jason Kidd caught a lot of crap after that Atlanta game out of the chute. They were blown out by the Hawks. And maybe this team, why did they get rid of Carlisle? All this other stuff. Now, Luka Doncic is not playing tonight. That is why that line is as high as it is. Ankle injury, he suffered against Denver a few nights ago. So he's out. The Mavericks have won now 5 of 6. They have not been a good road dog this year. So that's something to keep in mind. Phoenix, they're back home from a nice road trip. Minnesota, Houston, Memphis, won all 3 of them. And since starting off a little bit slow, these Suns are really back on track. We'll see how Dallas responds to that Luka tonight. Final game, Bulls and the Blazers from Portland. We had a few nights ago, Bulls, Lakers, Bulls, Blazers. It's like early 90s Sega Genesis with some of these games. But Portland laying 1.5. Damian Lillard returned to the Blazers lineup against the Raptors. They came back and won that game. Portland's like Atlanta. Excellent at home, terrible on the road. Portland 6-1 at Moda Center this year, 1-7 on the road. But Chicago, give them credit, 5-2 at home, 5-2 on the road. They've been consistent in both places. They go to Denver for the final stop of their road trip. They swept the LA teams at Staples, soon to be Crypto.com Arena, which you didn't hear that news. It's coming up on Christmas. They're dropping Staples Center to be Crypto.com Arena. But the Bulls, though, they played well. They continue to stay consistent. They had a bad loss to Golden State. They have a couple losses to Philadelphia, but Portland's nearly unbeatable at home. So Blazers laying a short number there against the Bulls. Final game, or Chicago's almost towards the end of that road trip after they take on Denver. So before we escape here, BetMGM. You know who they are. They're the king of sportsbooks. And the deal for new players only, bet $10 to win $200 if your team scores a touchdown. Bet on any NFL money line. If your team scores a touchdown, you'll receive an additional $200 in free bets. This is for new players only. Must be 21 years or older to participate. And it's legal in the following states: Arizona, New Jersey, Indiana, Colorado, Tennessee, West Virginia, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. only. Full terms and conditions apply. That is BetMGM. You know who they are. They are the king of sports books. All right, so my thanks to Brian Edwards for joining me today. And tomorrow, Vince Akins will return for his Thursday spot on the Daily Insider. Go over the top trends for NFL and college this weekend. I am Kevin Rogers. Don't forget to catch us again tomorrow at noon Eastern time for the Daily Insider. And don't forget, just like I say every day, best of luck with your bets.